So, yep. So we're just going to keep going with Canto 3, Chapter 6, Text 36, Creation of the Universal Form in the Srimad Bhagavatam. In my book, it's on Canto 3, page 247. And I will go ahead and ask Srila Prabhupada for his mercy and appreciate dear Govinda for the opportunity to increase my sincerity by having class with everyone today. And yeah, we'll go ahead and just say some mantras to invoke some auspiciousness. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of God, Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashtaprayashe Bandreshu Nitya Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Srimad Bhagavatam, and by rendering service at the feet of the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Okay. All right, so text 36. Start with the Sanskrit. Tatapi kirtayami anga Yathamati yathastrutam Kirtim hare svam satkartum
Kirtim hare svam satkartum
Giram anya vidhat satim
Giram anya visat
Satim.
Tatapi kirtayami anga
Tatapi kirtayami anga.
Yathamati yathastrutam
Yatamati yatashrutam.
Kirtim hare svam satkartum
Kirtim hare samsatkartum.
Giram anya vidyasatim
Niramanya vidasatim.
Tatapi kirtayami anga
Tapi kirtayam yanga.
Yatamati yatasrutam
Yatamati yatashrutam.
Kirtim hare svam satkartum
Kirtim hare samsatkartum.
Giram anya vidishtatam
Giramanya vidasatim. Tatapi kirtayam anga.
Tatapi kirtayami anga
Yatamati yatashrutam.
Yatamati yatasrutam
Kirtim hare samsatkartum.
Kirtim hare svam satkartum
Giram anya vidasatim.
Giram anya vidasatim.
Tatapi kirtayam yanga
Tatapi kirtim yamyanga
Yatamati yatashrutam
yatamati yatasam
Kirtim hare svam satkartum
kirtim hare sam satkartum
Giram anya vidasatim
giramanya satim tatapi kirtiyamyanga
Tatapi kirtayam yanga
yatamati yatashutam
Yatamati yatashrutam
kirtim hare swam satkartum
Kirtim hare svam satkartum
giramanya vidasatim
Giram anya vidasatim.
Tatapi kirtayami anya.
Tatapi kirtayami anga.
Yatamati yatathrutam.
Yatamati yatastrutam.
Kirtim hare svam patkartam.
Kirtam hare swam sakartum.
Giramanya bhagit hasatim.
Giram anya badir satim. We'll go for the word. Tata.
Tata.
Therefore.
Therefore.
Api.
Api.
Although it is so.
Although it is so.
Kirtayami.
Kirtayami.
I do describe.
I do describe.
Anga.
Anga.
O Vidura.
O Vidura.
Yatha.
Yatha.
As much as.
As much as.
Mati.
Mati.
Intelligence.
Intelligence.
Yatha.
Yatha.
As much as.
As much as.
Shrutam.
Shrutam.
Heard.
Heard.
Kirtim.
Kirtim.
Glories.
Glories.
Hare.
Hare.
Of the Lord.
Of the Lord.
Svam.
Svan.
Own.
Own.
Sat Kartum.
Satkartum.
Just purify.
Just purify.
Giram.
Gira.
Speeches.
Speeches.
Anya Bida.
Anyabida.
Otherwise.
Otherwise.
Asatim.
Asatim.
Unchaste.
Unchaste.
I like it when people who are leading classes ask if anybody is able to tell what this translation is going to be without reading the translation, just by looking at the word for word translation or transliteration. Yeah, I think that's fun. And so I like to look at these and see, and I see the word unchaste. And so immediately I know it's going to be a good one, because unchaste that's a heavy word, right? Unchaste is not one we see very often in the modern world. Chastity isn't really something we consider very much. And so I'm looking forward to that. And then we're giving speeches, and there's some stuff about intelligence and glories of the Lord, which is particularly fun for me. I like that topic. So I'm looking forward to reading this verse just by looking at the transliteration of the Sanskrit that Srila Prabhupada's given. So now that we've looked at that a little bit, we'll go to the translation. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Thank you, Srila Prabhupada. In spite of my inability, whatever I have been able to hear from the spiritual master, and whatever I could assimilate, I am now describing in glorification of the Lord by pure speech, for otherwise my power of speaking would remain unchaste. Purport. The purification of the conditioned soul necessitates purification of his consciousness. By the presence of consciousness, the presence of the transcendental soul is verified. And as soon as consciousness leaves the body, the material body is not active. Consciousness is perceived, therefore, by activities. The theory put forward by empiric philosophers that consciousness can remain in an inactive state is the proof of their poor fund of knowledge. One should not become unchaste by stopping the activities of pure consciousness. If the activities of pure consciousness are stopped, certainly the conscious living force will be otherwise engaged, because unless engaged, the consciousness has no standing. Consciousness cannot be silent, even for a moment. When the body does not act, the consciousness acts in the form of dreams. Unconsciousness is artificial. By induced extraneous help, it remains for a limited period, but when the intoxication of the drug is finished, or when one is awake, the consciousness again acts earnestly. Maitreya's statement that in order to avoid unchaste conscious activities, he was trying to describe the unlimited glories of the Lord, although he did not have the ability to describe them perfectly. This glorification of the Lord is not a product of research, but the result of hearing submissively from the authority of the spiritual master. It is also not possible to repeat all that one has heard from his spiritual master, but one can narrate as far as possible by one's honest endeavor. It does not matter whether the Lord's glories are fully explained or not. One must attempt to engage one's bodily, mental, and verbal activities in the transcendental glorification of the Lord. Otherwise, such activities will remain unchaste and impure. The existence of the conditioned soul can be purified only by the method of engaging mind and speech in the service of the Lord. The Tridandi Sannyas of the Vaishnav school accepts 3 rods representing the vow to engage in the service of the Lord with body, mind, and speech, whereas the Ekadandi sannyas takes the vow to become one with the Supreme, since the Lord is the Absolute. There is no distinction between him and his glories. The glories of the Lord, as chanted by the Vaishnav sannyas, are as substantial as the Lord himself, and thus, while glorifying the Lord, the devotee becomes one with him in transcendental interest, although he remains internally a transcendental servitor. This simultaneously one and different position of the devotee makes him eternally purified, and thus his life becomes a complete success. Om Jnanatirmirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Vadanti Svavadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Sinyavadi Paschati Deshatarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Right, well that was a great Srimad Bhagavatam class, guys. I really liked that. I think Maitreya said everything that needs to be said here. That we're just done for the day. It's like, dear Govinda, Danielle's breaking Srimad Bhagavatam class. She's not doing it right. But seriously, I mean, that's it. All we need to know. This is basically a treatise on how to live life perfectly. If we're living life perfectly, there's only one thing we need to do, which is constantly glorify the Lord and never forget about him. That's it. This is how to live a perfect life. We could just title it that. I like thinking about what everyone was doing when they were talking about these things, you know, because if we look at the Sanskrit, it's so hard for me. Yathastrutam, sat kutum, like it's like very beautiful. And I just think about them being together and just like it just emanating out of them. They're just like saying these things spontaneously. And I love when people bring that up because it is mystifying to think about these personalities who think themselves so fallen are actually so far beyond anything that I can even comprehend. They're just like magically emanating these poetic, mystifying glories of the Lord. Yeah, this is really powerful for me. And so we have Maitreya and Vidura, and they're sitting together in Hardwar, which I'm not sure where that is, but I hear that it's near the Ganges. And I imagine it's quite a nice time to have the two of them together, and they're really excited to be with each other. And, you know, they brought together, of course, by Uddhava and their, you know, love of Krishna, and Krishna's prepared Maitreya to talk to Vidura. And Vidura, you know, he's so excited because he wanted this particularly. He came because he really wanted to serve the Lord. He really wanted to be like a devotee and have that particular association, even though he's constantly serving the Lord, you know, as Yamaraj. So I think that it's really far out to think about this human form of life being coveted and craved by Yamaraj. And he came, and of course he came and he was like Lord and kingdom and commander of like the whole world. No, of course not. He came and he was like a lowly devotee, and he was like, of course he was also Vyasadev's son, which is quite elevated. So he was very protected, but you know, he came and he started this pilgrimage around the world, which is just, is far out to me. We think that, you know, someone comes and like Yamaraj, he's the guy who like comes at the end, like to take all of us away from here and like put us back into new bodies. He's a powerful guy. And he didn't come and like take control of the world. He came and he started sitting at the feet of Maitreya and learning. Like that was his like true desire, was to come. The guy who pulls everyone out at the last minute, kicking and screaming from these material corpses, comes to sit at the feet of Maitreya to hear about Lord Shri Krishna. I mean, that means something to me. That means a lot to me. You know, like, wake up, everybody, wake up, wake up. Yamaraj wants to sit and hear from Maitreya. So now's the time. Now's the time to hear from Maitreya. And what is Maitreya saying? He's saying, I got all this from my spiritual master, and I don't know how to say it perfectly, which for me, sitting here is very, very supportive, because, giving class, especially from the Srimad Bhagavatam, I'm supposed to be the representative of Srila Vasudeva. Like, this is me on the Vyasa-san. And of course, I'm not qualified to do that. So it's only through the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and his protection that I'm able to do this at all. Like, I have four defects, right? I have the propensity to make mistakes. I have the propensity to be illusioned. I have the propensity to cheat others, and all my senses are imperfect. So whatever I hear from the spiritual master, that's all I've got. That's all I've got. And guess what? It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. And Maitreya is, he's so, I feel like he's so kind, because he doesn't have to say this, but he does say it because he's saying it to me, and he's saying it for anyone in this mood. And I feel like this mood is the mood of our great spiritual tradition. Like, the more we know, the more we point out that it comes from source and not from self. We think about Krishnadas Kaviraj and how he thought of himself as like a worm and stool. And that's beautiful. Like, that's really beautiful to me. And I hear people who are like, I'm lower than the worm stool in the stool, and like, I'm like, you gotta agree, that's a little much maybe. And so we have to be careful about like not imitating and not trying to have that false conception. Because I was thinking about, like, when I first started this process, I couldn't stop crying. I cried for years, actually. Anytime I picked up a Java bag, anytime I was in a kirtan, anytime I tried to read a verse, I was pretty useless, actually, in my spiritual life. It was really difficult for me. I just kept crying and crying. And I couldn't figure it out. I was like, is this spiritual or material? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Or does this mean I'm like really messing this up and getting this wrong? And it took me a really long time to kind of investigate and navigate my personal process, because, Krishna says a lot of things. And it wasn't until I got connected with Lord Chaitanya that I kind of started figuring it out. Because early on, I heard from the Shashastakam, and he is powerful in the Shashastakam. I mean, he's glorifying crying. Lord Chaitanya is like, you're gonna cry. When you get it, like when you're eating the fruit that I'm eating, you're gonna cry. You're gonna cry. And also there's like a lot of reasons that we cry for all sorts of things that make no sense. There's all sorts of other reasons to cry, because there's so many passages in which they say that, crying over people leaving their bodies, or over, supposed reversals, it's just like wasted energy. So, like, what's the difference? When is it the right time to cry? And how do we know that we're on the spiritual path? Because I was doing a lot of crying, and it was interesting, because just this week we were talking about Lord Shiva. And like Lord Shiva, he has this pastime, it's inconceivable, where all the demigods and all the demons are, they're pulling Vasuki, and like they're trying to get this nectar. They want the nectar, and I want the nectar. That resonates with me. I also want the nectar. And Vidura wants the nectar. He sure wants the nectar. He's sitting right next to Maitreya asking for nectar specifically. And they don't get nectar. What do they get? They get poison. All the poison comes up. And it starts choking everyone out and killing everyone. And so they have to call Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva comes over. And for him, he drinks the poison. Which I feel like is the mood of a great pure devotee of the Lord, right? He's the topmost Vaishnava. He drinks the poison. So what does it mean to drink the poison? It means that we put ourselves into suffering to glorify the Lord. And then there's this magical thing that happens where the suffering becomes ecstasy. And so we're reading in Canto 1 right now about Arjuna. We're reading about Arjuna, and he's talking to his brother Yudhisthira, and they're devastated because Lord Krishna left the planet, which I can't even imagine, like, having been at, like, we have Vidura here at the foot of Maitreya, but imagine Arjuna, who was like, his head's like in the lap of Lord Krishna, like his personal intimate associate, and they're like teasing each other and playing together and like having so much fun. And then he leaves. He's gone. And so we think that he must be like bereft. And in some sense, I'm sure he is, because he misses his personal association. But also he has the spiritual master. He has a spiritual master as Krishna, and he gave us the Bhagavad Gita, and not for 1 second does he forget. And so he actually realizes, like, Krishna has given him everything and he's never left him. So he cries, but it's also ecstatic, right? And so it's like our great blessing in this Vaishnava tradition to have a soft heart, but not sentimentality, to have that ability to pierce ourselves and pierce each other with the separation and feel the ecstasy of that. Vidura came here specifically not to sit at the Lord's feet. I mean, not to sit at Krishna's feet. He came to sit at Maitreya's feet to talk about Krishna. And that's our special opportunity. We get to glorify the Lord. And Maitreya's, he's really illustrating that here. He's saying, look, like, I don't even know how to tell you about Krishna. Krishna is inconceivable. Like, there's no way for me to tell you everything about him. I don't know everything about him. He's amazing. He's the best person that I've ever had the, the pleasure of getting to know. And I don't know hardly anything about him. And now you came all this way for me to tell you about him. And, all I know I got from my spiritual master, and I can't even tell you that perfectly. And of course, like, he's saying this because partly it's true and partially it's his soft-heartedness, and partially that's the attitude. That's the correct attitude, to recognize that Krishna gave us everything because he loves us. So the Vedic knowledge is not a question of research. Prabhupada says that directly. Vedic knowledge is not a question of research, because we have imperfect senses. And those imperfect senses, I mean, if we try to speculate on things, or even if we try to research in earnest, like with a lot of endeavoring, without really linking it with humility and linking it with this feeling, with really feeling it, then we're going to get lost. We're going to get lost. And so one of the things I was thinking about recently is the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Like, we do this every day. Prabhupada's like, this is your prescription because you're mentally ill. You need to get this Mahamantra, and you need to chant it. And it says on the bottle 16 rounds. And people are like, well, that's crazy. And I'm like, yeah, it is crazy. It's super crazy. I'm like, what's your prescription? They're like, well, I like a lot of pornography, and I watch probably about 4 or 5 hours of television a day. And, I'm having some kind of like gambling thing that I do. We call it like a sports betting pool, and that's normal. That's cool. I'm cool with that. I spend a lot of time thinking about like which personality is going to overtake the other one in the sports game. But that's normal. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's normal. And of course, I drink some alcohol, and I like to, kill other living entities and like consume their bodies. And that's all really comfortable for me. And I like that a lot. And so this chanting thing that you're doing, it just sounds really weird. I don't know why you would do that. And I'm like, yeah, I do it for about like 2 hours a day or more. Sometimes actually in the afternoon, I like to spend time just doing it, just doing it by myself, even extra. I do extra. I take even more medicine. And they're like, man, I can't imagine doing that. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And so there's some question there about our senses being imperfect, but then we can just look at our mind and our activities, which are ceaseless, by the way. They're ceaseless and they're unchaste if they're not, what is he saying here? If they're not glorifying the Lord, if they're not acting in service of the Lord. And we have proof of that. We have proof of that because the tree by its fruit, right? So we can see like people who engage in these activities must be right. They must be right because they're eternally situated in perfect consciousness, and they have like the best like emotional regulation, and they have like, so no, of course not. They're like miserable, right? Like we know ourselves when we do these activities, it causes so much pain and frustration. Of course we're miserable. It doesn't bring what we think it will bring. How much TV can we watch before we're spiritually enlightened? I've done the experiment many times. I'm not feeling spiritual enlightenment. But it's a documentary, okay? Like, I'm learning about stuff. No, I'm really not. So yeah, if you want to be perfect and you want to be pure and you want to be in transcendental consciousness, then we need to study really hard, and we need to make sure that we're, endeavoring with all of our intellect. And like, no, of course not. Our senses are imperfect. That's not the process. Now, does that mean that we just like throw all these books away and they're useless? No, of course not. It's purifying. It's purifying to glorify the Lord. And how do we glorify the Lord? We meditate on his activities. We meditate on his friends. We meditate on all of the things that were passed down to us by Srila Prabhupada. We chant his names. He's non-different than his name. And how do we even get his name? I was thinking about that recently. It's only through the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He brought it to us. And that's why we say the prayer. That's why we're like, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. It's only through the power, the empowerment of those pure devotees who love us so much that they gave us the Mahamantra. And we get that empowerment. It's recommended. I know that Dear Govinda does this. I know other people do it too, where they chant the Panchatattva mantra mixed in with their japa. Like, like every round you chant a Mahamantra round, and then you chant the Panchatattva Mahamantra. Because it's through the pure devotee that we get the mercy. Lord Chaitanya came to give us, he's a transcendental gardener. He came to give us his fruit. He came to give us the fruit that makes us all mad. And I don't mean like angry, I mean like crazy. Who would do this except for crazy people, right? Like we're the ones taking the pill to get out of the matrix. It's perfect here. You get everything you want. You can have everything. You can be the Lord and commander of your own personal kingdom. But it's gonna come with like some penalties, and the penalties, you can accept those or you can ignore them. We can pretend that we're not gonna get old age, death, and disease. We can claim that birth is really fun and great for everyone, but we know that we try to stick it behind closed doors and lock people away and give them all sorts of like pharmaceuticals so they don't have to experience that. There's some like pretty heavy penalties for trying to be in our own kingdom. So yeah, like this Krishna consciousness process, it's a far out process. It's hard. I mean, there's truly trying to flip my mind inside out to think about, okay, suffering is beautiful and ecstatic and desirable. I'm like, what? And that's what Prabhupada says. He says, what is like nectar will eventually seem like poison, and what is poison will seem like nectar. And so here I am. I've been chanting this Maha Mantra for like, I don't even know, like since 2017. And finally, because like it's 2024 now, finally, most of a decade I've been chanting the Maha Mantra, and I have it's been like poison, man. It's been poison. I've been every round, I'm like, did another round, put that one in the spiritual bank account. like I don't know, like I'm pushing the boulder up, of the eternal boulder up the mountain or something. I'm just like, it's gonna slide back down tomorrow. It's like, and now it's interesting because all the things about life, which used to be very, very tedious, and there's so many things about life, and especially I don't know, it's a special blessing to be a stay-at-home mother. There's so many ways, and I get to experience this, like this transformation of consciousness, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about transformation of consciousness, everybody. And I get to do that through my dishes. My dishes are transforming my consciousness. How's that happening? Well, it's the same process. I'm scrubbing the dishes every day, right? And then as soon as the dishes are all clean and put away and they're perfectly organized, then the kitchen just stays like that for the rest of the day. No, of course not. Then somebody's hungry, right? I have a 4-year-old. She wants like 5,000 snacks a day. And so what do? I go to the kitchen, I get one of the dishes I just cleaned, and I make it dirty again. And so now here we go. I have another opportunity to clean the dish. And that's basically japa chanting. I cleaned all the dishes. Guess what? Did my japa chanting. But now guess what? I have the opportunity to redo the japa chanting, because it's not really cleaned. If it was really clean and perfect and all put away, we wouldn't have any need for it again. And so it's this constant, consistent, and there's so many, if I'm paying attention, there's so many ways in which I get this message over and over again. Like nothing here stays, there's no cleanliness. It's not a mistake that the Lord took the cleanliness away from this age. The cleanliness factor is so instructive to keep cleaning things over and over again. It's just so important for me. Like, they talk about increasing humility, and I've really spent a lot of time this week cleaning my toilet. Like I've been scrubbing it. I've been scrubbing it inside. I've been scrubbing it outside. I've been on my hands and knees, washing the back of my toilet, which I didn't even know that was an option until I actually watched YouTube videos on how to clean my toilet, because I wanted to get it right, because it's hard. Okay, toilet cleaning is a process, man. And like, I didn't know how to grow up. I mean, nobody taught me when somebody's fortunate out there. I know there are people out there who got the message of how to clean things properly, but I did not. And so I get to clean that toilet and I get to experience the humility of that. And I know it's interesting. George has told me he saw a documentary where high-powered CEOs, we're talking people who are like in charge of like billions of dollars, billions of dollars. And what do? They go to their big corporate offices in the middle of, what was it, Tokyo, George?
Panasonic.
Yeah, like Panasonic. Their CEO will go to the public restroom of their office where their employees are, and they will scrub the toilets to increase their humility. Now, these are people who are not supremely God conscious. These are people who are supremely in this mode of field of resources. They want to create money. And they're cleaning toilets. Why would they do that? Because there's universal spiritual principles that guide everyone. And they know that if they violate those principles, they won't be effective. They won't be able to do the job that they need to do. So they need to clean toilets. Everyone needs to clean toilets in the material world, even if you don't want to practice God consciousness, even if you want to get spiritual benefit. Everyone practices austerities, even if you want to be Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu, a great demon. All he did was austerities until he got to, of course, get his blessing, which was really his curse, which was really his blessing, because that's the way the world of Krishna works. It's like a candy-coated center with like all these like layers wrapped around it. So we get to unwrap the mysteries of the way that Krishna is. Yeah, it's a beautiful process. Krishna consciousness is very humbling, it's very enlivening, and I love hearing about like the Brahmin, the Kshatriya, the Vaishya, the Shudra. Why do we work? Why are we working? Like, why don't we just like, when we attain enlightenment, we get to sit on a cloud all day long and just chant Om? No, of course not. Like, we're going to be active. We're going to be active. There was never a moment where I can remember being inactive. Every night I have dreams. Every day I wake up and I'm just like immediately, I mean, like instantly, I'm like, I'm thirsty, I'm cold, my feet hurt, I'm itchy, I want to take a shower, somebody needs something from me. It's like, it's incessant. It's necessary. It's necessary. Like there's a reason for that. There's no stopping the activities of pure consciousness. But, and we are pure consciousness, we have to be careful, because if we do it unchastely, then there's danger. There's danger. We need the neck beads. We need the neck beads to keep us safe. Why do we need the neck beads? I wish we didn't. They're very irritating. I don't like wearing any jewelry, and I have to wear these neck beads. That's how I feel. I felt like that for years. And then recently I'm like, wait a second, like these neck beads, like I know when I die and Yamaraj comes, the Yamadutas will see the neck beads. And so that's super protective. Like by itself, that's a reason to wear the neck beads. Don't get me wrong. But also there's just austerity in putting them on and like having them. There's the austerity of it. And every suffering is an opportunity for I'm like, Lord, please take this as proof of my sincerity. Please just like take this as proof of my sincerity. I don't even pray anymore that things get fixed. I'm like, let it be broken if it needs to be broken. Just let you just take that as proof of my sincerity. Go ahead. Like I'll just suffer through it, whatever it is. It's not going to get better. There's some illusion I think I used to hold that things were going to get better in like a material way, like materially, like I could just like, if I could just fix this, or if I could study that, or maybe I could get some like extra information from here, but no, Yamaraj comes here and he's like pilgrimaging around, and like his pinnacle of like wanting to be here is like to talk about the glories of the Lord. It's not to like indulge in sense gratification. He doesn't come here to like have the best food or like get different activities that are more fun, or like have some kind of like pastime in which he's like really powerful, or like all the things are just like, no, his brother is like, trying to conquer and destroy the world and is under some kind of illusory spell that he's in charge of things, and is like torturing people that are really close to him and that Vidura loves very deeply, and he loves his brother too. And I mean, it's got to be very difficult for him, even in this material life that he incarnated into, to have to deal with this like, this transcendental drama that's really playing out in front of him. And does he get angry and like say, you know what, this isn't what I wanted, Krishna. I was granted the authority to come here and I deserve to enjoy, and like this really isn't what I signed up for. No, of course not. He's kind to his brother. He's kind to his family, and he does his best to lift and elevate everyone. Like that's the mood of the associates of the Lord, is they want to engage everyone in different activities that are perfect for their elevation. And so Krishna's so kind. He's like, you guys can't stop activity. You can't do it. That's how I've made it. And he's like, so you have these different classifications in which you get to work in. Like, and each one of you gets to, like, you know, through your awareness of self, which hopefully you'll develop as you grow in my creation, you'll discover which one of those are. I've given you like this special present you get to unwrap. And you get to decide, like, oh, I'm a Brahmana, or I'm a Kshatriya, or I'm a Vaishya, or I'm a Sudra. And he does that here with the demigods in this chapter. You know, he has material creation, he like lays it out. He's like, all right, it's all perfectly prepared. You know, me and my wife, we're gonna have these nice children. I've made all the preparations. You know, I went through that with George. We did all the nice preparations, get the nursery ready. Everybody's coming, you know, even though we've decided to leave him, he's so kind. He's like setting the nursery up for us, giving us all the toys that we want to play with, even though he has even better toys for us that we decided to run away from some reason. Setting that aside for a second for my analogy. He comes, he sets up the nursery, and then all the demigods are there and they're like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know. And so he manifests this beautiful Vivat Rupa, this like manifested incarnation of himself. And suddenly, by meditating on the Lord and by the expression of their unique quanta of consciousness, they get realization about themselves, right? They're like, oh, I'm actually supposed to go to the hands, you know, like I'm supposed to enter the genitals, you know, I'm supposed to be in giving all the living entities fragrance and sense. And so they are inspired by their association with the Lord. And so if we want to know what we're supposed to be doing with our lives, we get inspired by our association with the Lord. If we're feeling unclear in our consciousness about what it is that we're supposed to be doing with our life, it's a good indicator that we're not spending enough time chanting our japa. We're not spending enough time reading from Srila Prabhupada's books, because it's not a question of research. It's not a question of mental speculation. It's not a question of like, well, I really like flying kites. Do you think I could turn that into a job? It's like, well, maybe, but is that really what you're supposed to be doing with your life? Like, I don't know. Always fixed on me, everything engaged in me. You will attain me without any doubt. And we're going to be active. So these jobs that we have, they're not meant to be like, okay, well, look, I want to be a temple devotee. That's really what I want to do, but I have bills to pay. So I guess I have to go to this job. I'm gonna become an accountant. It's like embarrassing when I show up at the temple. Yeah, I'm an accountant, guys. It's like I'm all about Maya. It's like all day long, 24/7. I'm the Maya guy. Numbers, money all day. And everyone's like, oh man, that must be so rough. No, of course not. Like everyone gets to have their unique quanta of consciousness engaged for the benefit of the whole purpose. And so we can be engaged in our service no matter what we're doing. Like that's Lakshmi, guys. Like that's like uniting Krishna and Lakshmi. We're like the gopis in the forests of Vrindavan. You know, that's Lakshmi. She's there, and we're arranging for her to be united with Krishna. And that's what I do all day as an accountant. That's how I'm engaging myself in Krishna consciousness. I'm helping the devotees of the Lord so that they can multiply and manifest and create new things that, you know, Lakshmi provides in this material world. That's how I help people all day. That's what I'm doing. That's how I'm helping people. And even if I'm not serving pure devotees of the Lord, I'm not serving aspiring devotees of the Lord, still, like I'm helping spirit souls get more entangled into Maya and illusion so that they can feel the pain of that and hopefully one day say like, you know what, I think I might turn off the TV and read this book that some weird guy handed me at the mall. Like, this actually looks pretty cool. I don't know what this guy is doing on the back of the cover, sitting on this like big pillow thing, but it appeals to me right now. And I've watched like 27 hours of TV in my 24-hour day. So maybe I'll just pick this book up and see what it's about. So yeah, maybe that's what the accountant is doing, is like figuring out complicated ways of entangling this guy into Maya and illusion for his eternal spiritual benefit. And it's hard to look at it that way. It's not something that we like to hear. You know, we want to think like we can liberate everyone and that, you know, we're gonna hand them Vedic knowledge because of all of our research work, and then things are just going to be perfect. Their imperfect senses are going to just clear right up, and they're just going to have that material covering just like slide off of them like a Teflon pan, and we're just gonna be like, so we did it. Like we're the best devotees, you know, like, and I want that too. But that's not always the process. You know, sometimes Krishna's got more complicated things in store for people and we don't see it. Yesterday, George and I went out, just proof of our material engagement. We went out of the house yesterday. It's crazy. It's probably the first time this week I went out of the house. And we went to the beach. George had a conference he had to go to on Saturday. And we sat around on the beach for a while. And, you know, Saraswati played in the sand and I chanted some japa. It was really nice. And then Did we go home? No, we didn't go home, which I thought was really cool. We went out and we said, you know what, I just need to see some people. I need to go downtown. I had no idea. I mean, I didn't know why. And it was a weird day because I think it was St. Patrick's Day. There were a lot of people who were dressed in green. St. Patrick's Day is a strange holiday in which people really like to get intoxicated. It's this weird holiday. I'm like, okay. And there were like hundreds of them out, hundreds of people out dressed in all these like costumes. I mean, they had shamrocks on antennas there that were bobbling around. They had top hats. There were blow up dolls strapped to people's backs that were dressed in green shamrock outfits. They had on like leg warmers and like, you know, like tutus, like green tutus with the men with sparkles and sequins. I mean, like far out stuff, guys, way far out. And I happened to that day because I don't know, I live in my house most of the time to wear, I had like this nice, like sari, you know, like fabric wrapped around my head and like around my shoulders and like draped around my body, wearing a nice dress. And it was seems very natural for me. I forgot that I was wearing it. And so I was walking around downtown with my little daughter and my husband, George. And, you know, this was what I was wearing, which of course is very normal for me. And everyone else was dressed in these ways, which I guess is very normal for them, which was outlandish to me. And I couldn't believe it, man. People were like breaking their necks, like almost falling over themselves to look at me. Like, what is she wearing? What is she wearing? What has she got on? What has she got on? And I had my japa bag around my neck and had my beads on, you know. And George was very chaste. He had just come from a work conference. He was like wearing like, you know, like a nice like black sweater and like some jogger pants or something. He was like very normal looking. And Saraswati had like a little windbreaker on. But people couldn't, they were like losing their minds. They could not believe this woman wearing this piece of cloth. It was like, and I'm like, what is the quality of that? And I was like really like mystified by like Krishna's arrangement for me. Like, why is it that people are so drawn to this? And like, I was like, why am I drawn to this? Why am I downtown right now? This was like a very unusual thing for me to be engaged in, especially with my family on a Saturday. And so, because I had dishes to do, the transcendental dishes. so I was contemplating this, and there was suddenly like we came up to the corner of this intersection, and a woman turned around and was like obviously looking at me very closely, like directly at me. And I said, Hare Krishna, and George said, Hare Krishna. And George became a little protective. Well, it turns out prior to us coming up to this corner, George had seen that her male companion, which we assumed to be her husband, turned to her and said, oh God, look, it's them. Or like, look at them, or something like that. And so George was prepared. Like he knew that these people were like, they were looking for us. And so when he came up to them, we had a nice little interaction where they were like, oh God, she was like, Hare Krishna, like what does that mean? And I'm like, it's a greeting, it's a blessing, you know, it's names of God. And George explained a little bit about that too. And then the man who was there, who was pretending not to notice us, finally turned around and he's like, Hare Krishna, like what does that mean? And you know, George is like, it's a blessing, it's a greeting. And the man's like, I remember when you guys started in San Francisco. This guy knows who we are. He knows who we are. Like he knows who we are. He's like, I remember you're from San Francisco. I'm like, actually, we're from here. We're here now. We're here. He's like, you know, you were in the 1970s in San Francisco. I'm like, we're 2024 Pensacola right now. He's like, your parents were there. I'm like, her parents are here. And I like point to Saraswati. Her parents are here. And he's like, but your parents, they were part of that movement, right? I'm like, no, our parents were not part of that movement. This guy, Krishna, by his divine arrangement, this guy has been calling for us since 1970 San Francisco, and he needed us to come. He needed to see the neck beads. He needed to see the japa bag. He needed to see my far out sari, and like of all the things that we could see on that street. I mean, men dressed as women, blow up dolls strapped to people, like all sorts of weird stuff going on. I'm the one that sticks out somehow for him. Like I'm the one that he needs to like be inimical towards for his eternal spiritual benefit. Like I showed up there for him. So that's it. We get to be consciousness disruptors. We get to have that energy. That's our eternal occupation. If we're engaged in Krishna's service, whatever he wants for us. And we got to listen to it. So like we're driving around the car and I get the intuition, like I just need to go downtown right now. And I'm not saying that we need to be whimsical or that we need to, artificially impose things on ourselves that we're going to be, temporarily engaged in various activities for God. But, there are times in which we get clarity, and when we get that clarity, we need to describe it and really embrace it and have that intelligence to be submissive to it, because that's sufficient. I mean, that's the sufficient engagement, is like whatever it is that Krishna wants for us, we're submissive to it. Whatever it is that the spiritual master tells us, we're submissive to it. And so whatever classification we're in of work and whatever level of intelligence we have, we get to be submissive to that. It's not like, I don't want to be a Sudra. Like, this is what I want, like, I also don't want to clean the dishes. Like, I feel that, like, I get that, like, it's not great, but there's great things about doing the work in the mode of a Sudra, like there's so much artistry in the mode of Sudra, like thinking about like people, like if I opened up my walls right now, like just imagine I opened them up, they're going to be like beautiful pipes running through my walls, beautiful pipes. And like, there's like boards inside of here that go all the way from the top to the bottom. And there's like electrical wires that go inside of those. And each one of them has to be carefully calibrated to not burn my house down. And the laborers who did that have to have an immense amount of knowledge in order to be able to undertake that task. They have to have the physical like wealth of like potency of like vitality to be able to lift those boards and nail those nails in. And they all have to be nailed in properly, or this wall's going to fall on me. And like, I don't even know what else happens behind that. Like something else is probably going on back there. And so, yeah, like there's like beautiful meditative qualities of being able to do something like construct a house, or or like, fix plumbing, or, whatever it is. And there's also so much like humility in that job. There's a lot of honesty. There's a lot of, I bought a pipe and the pipe was $115, and here's my receipt for $115. And I'm going to charge you $125 for labor or whatever. It's been a while since I've had plumbing work done, you can tell. But they do that. They give you like an estimate, and there's like bill, and there's like invoices attached to it. And there's honesty in that. And I think that's beautiful. So we're all Sudras here. Like we're all Sudras. And also we do have our unique dharmic potency. And there's no difference for the Lord. Like he actually sees the demons and the demigods as equal in some ways. Like he sees that they're all his material energy, they're all his creation. And he wants all of them to come back to Godhead. I mean, even like every conditioned soul he wants to liberate. He sends his pure devotees over and over again to liberate us. He comes in different incarnations to reclaim us. All the acharyas, all they're doing here, all his associates, all of his servants are coming to help us. That's all they're doing, is coming to liberate us over and over and over again. And then we're down here and we're just like, we're just Arjuna on the battlefield, right? And Arjuna, he's on the battlefield, and he just knows what to do, right? He's just like in perfect consciousness. He's been hanging out with Krishna for forever. He's like, I know it all, Krishna. You could just get to drive the chariot and I'm in charge. Like, I know everything. No, of course not. What does he do? He says, look, man, help me. Get me out of here. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm a soul surrendered unto you. Please save me from this place. Like, he's been hanging out with Krishna his whole life. He's the pure devotee of the Lord, his eternal transcendental confidant since forever. And what does he do? He, in his great wisdom, submits himself completely to the authority of the Lord and says, please help me. Just like save me from this place. He asks questions. That's what he does. That's our instruction. We can look at him and see the instruction. And then what does the Lord do? He says, just think of me. Just think of me, and be engaged for me, and be fixed on me, and don't stop your activity. Like, keep fighting. Don't stop. You don't stop. It's not like sit on a lotus flower and just like the battle of Kurukshetra will fight itself. No, of course not. Like, fight. You have to get in there. You got to do them dishes. You got to put the whatever wires away. You got to clean the house, or whatever it is, whatever your duty is. Like, make those numbers the best, whatever like spreadsheet you're working on, whatever children's book you're authoring, whatever service is available in the Lord. Because there's so many services. I mean, literally infinite numbers of services. There's infinite names of the Lord. There's infinite ways to glorify those names. So whatever your service is for the Lord, just be fixed on him and don't stop it. Don't stop the service, and keep the japa bag close, because that service is eternal. It's eternal, eternal, eternal. And don't forget to say the Panchatattva Mahamantra Sapanchatattva mantra and then the Maha mantra, because that's the process we go through. We go through the spiritual master, Lord Chaitanya, then Krishna. So yeah. I just, yeah, I feel very, very grateful to be speaking. I hope that I've remained chaste. And yeah, I appreciate these great personalities for getting me connected. And if you ever feel like crying, which I do all the time, maybe you'll be lucky and it'll be that kind of crying that's coming from that place that washes the diamond. That was the process I went through. Dear Govinda, he gives these great seminars. If you haven't been to them, I recommend them. They're not easy and they're not for the faint of heart, just like the rest of the material world, but they are helpful. And I went through this process. He gave us, the opportunity to unveil a special gift. And of course, it's like in our own hearts. So it's not like he gives us something to unwrap. So in my special gift, my heart, when I unwrapped it, it was a bottle, beautiful bottle full of some kind of liquid. And when I investigated, it was a bottle of my own tears. And I thought, what a strange gift to get. What am I supposed to do with this? This like beautiful bottle had a handle. It was like for pouring. And over the years, I've realized it's to cleanse my diamond. The tears wash away the sickness and the disease. It's to take off those deep clods of mud. And sometimes I've needed a pressure washer with that bottle, to really get some of those deep, crusty parts off. But basically, that's what the Srimad Bhagavatam is for. It's to help us wash our diamond. And then when we're fixed and we're fixed up and we're in perfect transcendental ecstasy, we don't stop the crying. We keep it going because we need to flood the whole world. We need to wash everybody. We need this whole place scrubbed down. And Lord Chaitanya is the perfect example. He comes to show us that when we really see what's happening here, it's cry, it's laugh or cry. And sometimes we laugh and sometimes we cry and sometimes we fall down unconscious for a while. And I feel like that's what Lord Chaitanya is exhibiting all the time through his like perfect, beautiful, inconceivable manifestation. That if our senses were perfect and we didn't have these 4 defects, we would constantly be in the state of just dancing and singing and crying and fainting and like having all sorts of like emanations of perfect ecstatic love. Yeah, so Hare Krishna, thank you so much for your time and attention. I welcome, the Bliss London devotees, they say, I welcome your envious comments. Please direct them directly to my face. I would like any personal attacks. And I always feel enlivened by that because I think it comes from like this playful spirit of humility and also like a real sobriety that when you say hard things, when you say things about that are glorifying the Lord, there's going to be a certain segment of the population that reacts like that man reacted on the street with his wife yesterday, where it's hard for them. And so they're very public facing. And I think it's important to be engaged in that and have a thicker skin. So I'm showing up today and I appreciate so much this devotional space that everyone creates. And there's like so much love in this community and there's so much tenderness and safety and shelter. And that if anybody steps out of this place for even 2 seconds, they'll realize it's a completely different world out there. And so, yeah, like I want to get to that place where I could give a class publicly and say, I welcome your envious comments and please like personal attacks, just add them because then guess what? I'm being effective. Guess what? I'm being effective. Then I'm Krishna's instrument. Then I'm really like touching hearts and minds because that person was triggered by me. And that means that they want to spend time learning about the glories of the Lord, even if it's just to refute me. And what a nice service to have. So Hare Krishna. Thank you again. And yeah, I welcome any comments or questions, envious or otherwise.
Hare Krishna, Danielle.
Hare Krishna.
Bhaktin, Danielle. So what I'm seeing is like effulgence, right? So I'm feeling like the woman in the streets of Pensacola wasn't just attracted by what you were wearing, but it was your bodily luster that was shining through so radiantly that no one could keep their eyes off of you. Because that's what I'm experiencing right now, is that I can't keep my eyes off of you because you are so powerful and you're so real and genuine. And I could just see your body luster, like it was a little dull at the beginning, and then it was like growing and growing, and then like, whoo, you're like, there she is. She's like full radiance, full on. And so I just wanted to appreciate you and to be the mirror for you to say that I'm seeing you so radiant, and that's what the attraction is. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Anasuya. I hear your appreciation for me, and yeah, I'll carefully consider your feedback. I have gotten some feedback like that not too long ago. People were calling me radiant at the grocery store. They were calling me effulgent at the grocery store, which is such a strange word for people to use outside of Krishna consciousness. Had 3 separate ladies stop me in the grocery store during one day to tell me how effulgent and radiant I was. So yeah, I think there might be something to that. Hare Krishna, thank you.
I'll share something, Hare Krishna. So I went to a work conference this morning or yesterday morning, and it brought up a lot of things that I've been kind of wrestling with recently. And I'm really appreciating your class. I got clarity, like I was praying this morning while chanting to Prabhupada and Krishna to give me clarity about, for me specifically, it was this idea of board certification. And essentially it sounds like in orthodontics being board certified doesn't mean anything. It's almost like a little pat on the head, another stamp until they could come up with the next stamp that you need to kind of jump through the next hoop. But I'm appreciating Krishna's like influence in my life, even in this setting of some occupational engagement. And I really got clarity from your class as to what I'm supposed to do. Part of me is like, there's so little time in the world, and in my life personally, I'm like, I would rather just read, start reading Chaitanya Charitamrita or continuing reading my personal reading in Canto 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam. So I'm like, why would I devote time to something that's completely unnecessary to me, to doing my thing? But I definitely got clarity in your sharing that like, it doesn't matter necessarily what it is, to the extent that I'm doing it with detachment. Like, Krishna, if you like, we'll go this way. If you like, we'll go that way. And let me not be attached to either. By doing it with thinking of you, then just because I'm studying for a paper test, like a Scantron test, that really is no influence really on my professional career financially or being able to render my service, like, it's not necessarily detracting from my bhakti. And it's not less than, another service activity that I would be doing, so I really felt like Krishna through Paramatma Super Soul connection today was really reciprocating with me through your sharing and some of the details that you went to in your class regarding and doing what I'm doing, and that it's not, and one thing is not Maya and the other thing is Krishna, and like to be so rigid in my own frame of mind at seeing things. So I really feel, and I think when I come to this point, then it doesn't feel like you're talking about the consciousness, right? Like I guess like, and even in the purport, it was talking about pure consciousness and how we engage that stuff. This may be. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. Hare Krishna.
We won't hide Krishna away. We won't do it. Yeah. Yeah, you were playing hide and seek with Dada, and you couldn't find Krishna, and it was very scary for you because you didn't know where Krishna was.
She was taken by a monster that Daddy forgot him.
Yeah, you thought maybe Krishna was taken by a monster. You thought maybe that Dada forgot Krishna and you couldn't find him, and you were feeling so afraid. And so you want to play hide and seek again, but you don't want Krishna to be hidden. Okay, well, Mom and Dad are almost finished, and then we'll come play hide and seek with you, but we won't hide Krishna, okay? Just a minute. Hare Krishna. George, I love you sharing because, well, one, I get to hear about this a lot because, you're my partner in this life. And two, I like that you're feeling inspired to read more. I feel like that's really supportive for our household. And I love that that's where you're going. And if I'm inspiring someone to read, then I'm being successful and I'm like doing the service that is meant to be done in this lifetime. And also, I really like where you're going with this idea of, okay, Krishna is in charge and I don't know what my service is. I mean, that's Arjuna's mood, right? Arjuna's like, I think I should go run away into the forest. And Krishna's like, okay. And then he's like, well, what do you think I should do? And he's like, okay. Now let's get real about what's real. If you're asking me, like I have ideas about what you should do. And so I like that that's your mood. You really want to, you want to just get engaged in Christian service, and you're willing to transcend the illusion that something is good and something is bad, this idea of duality. You're willing to suspend that and think like, okay, what if things weren't black and white, yes and no, on and off, one or two? Like, what if things were really just, like various ways in which we get to glorify the Lord? And like, so like if I attained perfect consciousness, like would anything actually materially change? That's not what I see in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Most of the time, everything stays exactly the same. And they're ending up like in disease conditions, and they have birth and death and old age, and there's all sorts of like infighting and like, challenges and suffering, and like, and it's beautiful. And it's beautiful if we're doing it in pure consciousness. If we're doing it in pure consciousness, you can translate purports up until the moment you leave your body.
Yeah,
You have pure consciousness.
Krishna, because it's the idea of being duty bound, right? Like to be duty bound, and to really trust. Yes, I think to be duty bound and to really trust that, like, that's why I'm like, even Prabhupada, he says like he took on so many risks,
Yeah.
at an old age to give us the reason that we're here today.
Yeah.
For without attachment, just to be duty bound for Krishna, to just be duty bound, to not have some like fruitive result come out of it. And with that, just it releases so much of that angst of like, I need to prepare, and what will people think, and it's like, no, like let me just be duty bound to engage in this service, and like calm pulse as I go through it, and just because I'm not really doing it really, like Krishna will reciprocate with me, and because he knows what's in my heart, and to the extent that I'm doing it for his pleasure, to the extent I'm trying to please Krishna, the master of the gopis, through Srila Prabhupada's grace, like I think that's it. That's the perfection of life. It's not some like, oh, and then you become this, and then the whole carnival and festival. No, like no, it's just do my duty and cultivate an internal spiritual life through it, and through wanting to please Krishna, and that's it. Like,
Yeah, you might have a calm pulse, and maybe that's your service, and also maybe you won't. And then maybe it gets to be an opportunity to offer that in service to the Lord also. Like maybe your pulse will be quite quickened with pain or suffering or longing or ecstasy or whatever, because the material waves aren't going to stop. They're going to keep coming. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Bhaktin, Danielle.
Krishna.
I have like at least a dozen deep pearls from your class, and then there's so many pearls. So just one or a few things I'll mention. I was very inspired. One pearl was you said the revelation and guidance that comes from source, not self. Just a very eloquent distinction there. So many powerful distinctions you just smoothly expressed. And yeah, you well, one thing from the early days, the Prabhupada's movement in America, New York, San Francisco, 1966, 67, that came to me as you were sharing some aspects of your class. And Prabhupada was so when he came, the first publication, the first publication that they published there in 66 in New York, but Prabhupada's first publication when he came to America is called Who's Crazy? Because Srila Prabhupada, he'd be walking in New York with students in New York 66, and so some of the passersby would be like, "You're crazy, you're completely crazy, you're crazy." So Prabhupada thought about it, and he concluded, there definitely is someone crazy here. Let's take a look. He was convinced there is someone crazy here. Let's just see who it is. And so the first pamphlet he published, he analyzed kind of real similar to the way you analyzed it. He analyzed like, okay, are we this body? Are we the owner of the body? What's okay? And so what are we trying to satisfy? What's this process of bhakti? And what's the other process? And so that was his first pamphlet. And what's the other process that entangles us further? Oh, yeah. One of the examples you gave. One of the examples you gave was from about gambling. So just a day or two ago, I'm reading through. Actually, just earlier this morning, I completed the 11-volume Prabhupada's Bhagavatam lectures, the transcriptions. So I did the 12th just today. And so just right there's Prabhupada, he's speaking, and he speaks specifically about absorption and pastimes that will support us in our eternal life and back to Godhead and self-realization, and different immersions that won't. You mentioned 27 hours of TV in a 24-hour day. Probably not good for spiritual life. And so Prabhupada said, essentially, he used the term football scores. This was very difficult for me to read. And so what he said, yeah, so you just you check the football scores. That's not going to help you. Okay, so just because you mentioned the football gambling, and then yeah, you mentioned about that was a very moving part of your class about chanting, and then and the dishes. You finished the dishes, so now you're eternally finished cleaning dishes. No, you're probably not even finished for like 60 minutes, because then, okay, right. So similarly with the heart, we chant it, and you said like, yeah, if we're just completely steadily pure, we don't need to chant any, like we wouldn't need to do it again and again. So that's true and not true. I mean, it's true from the point of view of like need. We won't need. I'm reminded there's a conversation with Srila Prabhupada, and just similar to your class, and some of the Prabhupada students, I don't know if they were walking on a beach in California or it was in Prabhupada's room, but it was a conversation very poignant in Srila Prabhupada. So that some of his followers, they sort of have this have-do attitude. 16 rounds. Yeah, and you were kind of sharing, you were doing some personal self-disclosure. 16 rounds. And then Prabhupada, he said, why not 16,000 rounds? So that's it. Meaning, if we're in this spiritual lamentation like Srila Haridas Thakur, like that, then just like Srila Rupa Goswami is lamenting, what can I chant with what can I chant in here with one mouth and two ears? If I had millions of mouths, then maybe something. So that, in other words, like I want to chant 16,000 rounds per day. Then we don't need to chant. Then we don't need to make any commitments to chant 16 rounds. But Prabhupada was making the point, yeah, because you're not just like inspired, I want to chant 16,000 rounds, then it's essential that you make a commitment to some fixed number. But then, yeah, so the commitment is because we don't have that taste. If we have that taste, then there's no need or have to. And then we're naturally inspired to 24 hours a day chant it, japa, some form or other. And I appreciate you dealt with. Yeah, this is so profound and deep. Everything in Bhagavatam, this verse so much, this line in the purport so much stood out to me. If the activities of pure consciousness are stopped, certainly the conscious living force will be otherwise engaged, because unless engaged, the consciousness has no standing. And then Prabhupada, he goes on, and essentially Prabhupada's talking about anesthesia. That's what he's talking about when that paragraph goes on. If someone's under anesthesia, you can say the consciousness is stopped. And Prabhupada makes the point that he says by induced extraneous help, remains for a limited period. Unconsciousness is artificial. By induced extraneous help, it remains for a limited period. But when the intoxication of the drug is finished, or when one is awake, the consciousness again acts earnestly. So for me, that, you know, we use the term. Thanks for your plug for the Software courses. Yeah, so we use the term, you know, be do have. We didn't make up that term, but I think someone in the 60s, maybe Marshall McLuhan, that I think maybe was first. Be do have do be. So this is so be do have in a way that's distinctively Srimad Bhagavatam. I've shared with some here. I once in Peterborough, Canada, in outside of Toronto, we were conducting a foundational seminar. Towards the end, we presented Be Do Have. There were two participants in the foundational seminar, John and Sarah. They were about 30 years old. They were both PhDs, and they teach transformation. They teach conflict resolution around the world. And when they heard Be Do Have, they were stunned. And then Sarah, she said, I teach this, but till now, I realized I never understood it. And then John said, yeah, it's not possible. I've just realized it's not possible to really understand it until you get the way you presented it. And the way I present it is Bhagavatam, how, you know, we're the diamond soul, we're not the body, the three modes of nature. So of course, it's all those principles that are valid in personal transformation, personal growth, find their completion and depth and perfection in Bhagavatam. So, you know, so because we talk about there's being and there's doing, and they're separate. And simultaneously they're one. And Prabhupada so elegantly states that here, that certainly the conscious living force will be otherwise engaged, because unless engaged, the consciousness has no standing. We can have consciousness, then there's doing. No, as soon as there's consciousness, there's doing, and like doing the activity, and the bhakti is the yoga of activity. I liked your meditation, Om in the clouds. Like, no, that's not the process. You know, so like, as soon as there's doing, consciousness is founded in bhakti, which is active service. So being and doing separate and simultaneously one. Prabhupada, so elegant there. And thanks for addressing that. Hare Krishna.
I appreciate, dear Govinda. I appreciate so much all of your sharing and your pearls. And I really like, who was it that said that it was Srila Rupa Goswami who said he wanted to make more mouths. Yeah. We're making more TVs. That's what we're doing. We're like ready to do 27 hours. I mean, like, I figure 3 on the phone, 24 on the TV. That's 27, right? At least I could do up to 48 hours now. I have 2 screens. I could make more screens if I wanted. That's also an option. We have that option. And so I like the idea of Srila Rupa Goswami wishing for more mouths and like being able to have more ears, and like that's the alternative consciousness. And also, of course, we don't have to reject our screens. We are using screens right here, right? We're using screens today. I'm using screens. And people, I often read off of my phone, and I hear all sorts of lectures from around the world, and interact with everybody in Alachua and Gainesville. And Anandini is here from Switzerland, you know, all the way from Switzerland. We're having her presence here through screens. So everything engaged in Christian service. And I appreciate your depth of wisdom. I appreciate how much you've read. I appreciate how much you associate with Srila Prabhupada. I appreciate how much I wouldn't be here without you. I mean, for sure, I wouldn't be here without you. George and I wouldn't be married. It just wouldn't have happened without the work that you do. So you're engaged in your service, and there's a result of that. And now we have fruit. We have a little child over here who's terrified that Krishna is going to be hidden from her because dad's playing hide and seek and doesn't realize how important it is that Krishna is not hidden from her for even a second. Her little heart is just like destroyed. We had a whole breakdown process about that 2 days ago because Krishna was hidden from her for just a second. And I think, man, I wish I had some of that. I wish I had that consciousness. Like, she's so instructive for me. It's such a nice, it's a nice experience having her as a daughter in this lifetime. And in part, that's directly because of the people who are on the screen today. If it wasn't for this community, if it wasn't for your leadership, if it wasn't for Krishna directing me to apply for the city of Gainesville and Anasuya taking us over to Krishna's cottage to hear one of your classes, you know, it wouldn't have happened for me. I wouldn't have, you know, this daughter who's like who's like my spiritual master, who I get to be the spiritual master of, you know, like we're having this like, it's like this Madhura Maitreya, you know, on a micro level. Like, who's the spiritual master? You know, like nobody, it's only Krishna, but then also everybody, because we're all engaged in service and we're all supporting each other. And so I feel very supported by everyone's association and by your leadership, dear Govinda. I'm leading class today, even though I would never in a million years or 10,000 years or wherever like have chosen to do the service. You were standing up for me. And so thank you for this opportunity to increase my sincerity. I feel like it has increased. Hare Krishna. If there's any other comments or questions or sharings or before we key jai it out. Everyone's just reaching for their microphone button. I just know it. Everyone's over there just like fumbling around trying to find the microphone button. All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All
Hare
glories.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All glories
Thank
to the
you.
Lord. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.